Good morning, dear students, and welcome to our third topic for the midterm. And this is all about quality management. It is widely accepted nowadays that medical decisions are reliant on laboratory results. And to have these values for clinical decision making, an individual lab test result must have total error small enough to reflect the biological condition being evaluated. Determining and maintaining accuracy requires considerable effort and cost. However, the benefits that we are going to gain from such is much more higher than its cost. I am Bea Angeli D. Laude, your lecturer for today. At the end of this lecture, you will be able to explain the importance of quality management, understand the concepts of quality assurance, differentiate quality control and quality assurance, explain the different terms relevant to quality control, and lastly, describe the process of method evaluation. In order for us to understand the concept of quality, it would be important to appreciate quality first. According to Clambert in the year 1990, quality is very important to customers. It can be assessed and monitored, it can be improved, and quality's benefits exceed its cost. We have lots of ways to measure the quality of our services. If in case the results are low, we can always find ways to make it better. Every institution aims to provide the best quality of service that they can to their clients so that they can attain their goal, and that is customer satisfaction. Every client deserves the best quality of the product that is worth their money. So in the healthcare sector, our clients are our patients, and the product that we can provide them is the quality of our healthcare. The quality of a certain product is going to affect our decisions. So, for example, in choosing a mobile phone, would you go for iPhone, the expensive iPhone, or would you go for Android? They have the same purpose, that is for communication, for texting and calling. However, they have different features, and at the same time, they are going to have different prices. So we know that iPhones are much more expensive than the other brand of phone. So would you still go for iPhone rather? What made you decide to buy iPhone? Is it because of the features, or is the quality worth its price? Also, when it comes to automobiles, which do you prefer? The Ford Raptor or the Toyota Hilux? Both of them can take you wherever you want to go. But what makes Ford much more expensive than Toyota? How does it differ with Toyota? And the question is, if you are going to purchase Ford, is it also worth its price? For book lovers, would you go for a paperback book or a hardbound book? Knowing that your hardbound book is much more expensive compared to your paperbacks, in which it could actually double its price, would you still go for it? What makes it different from your paperback novels, in which they are going to contain the same story? Every consumer is going to seek for high quality products and high quality services. However, what takes us away from quality is actually the quantity. Most of us would prefer to have much more items at a particular cost. Okay, but the problem is quality is going to have a price. Okay, in quality, less for more, but we are going to get a very good service, a very good type of product. Whereas if you are going to choose quantity, in which says it is going to have more for less, okay, the quality is actually being compromised. So isn't it better to have quality and quantity at the same time? In the medical sector, our patients are our clients, and healthcare is our product. Patients are going to select the best healthcare facility based on the quality of services. In the laboratory, our product is the laboratory results. That's why it is important that we are going to provide them with accurate, precise, and reliable results in order for them to achieve the right diagnosis. As we go along with the lecture, you are going to encounter the concept of quality assurance, quality control, and method evaluation. And these three comprises quality management. So if you could recall in your PMLS1, we have the three phases of the testing process. We have the pre-analytic, we have the analytic, and you also have your post-analytic. So different activities are set in each phase. However, an error from a particular activity is going to affect the entire testing process. So for example, you have here your pre-analytic, which includes patient identification and client preparation, as well as sample collection. It also involves the competency of our employees, particularly the medical technologists, receiving the samples and accessioning and transportation if necessary. Okay, so therefore, if there is problem or error in patient identification, mali ang patient na kinuna ng dugo. And in some cases, mali pag yun ang sample nga gisubmit or gi-collect, okay, for it to be analyzed, that is actually going to affect the entire process of the laboratory. Okay, so next, analytic. This is actually the most crucial because this is where we are going to do the testing of our samples. Okay, so if the values are already acceptable, we are going to report them to the respective physicians or to the patient mismo in the form of giving out laboratory results. And of course, we are going to keep our records for future retrieval. So it is very important that in all three phases, we are going to assure quality. We ensure the safety of our employees as well as of our patients. And of course, we are going to provide excellent customer service. Okay? So in the three phases, si analytic ang pinaka-crucial. Okay? So this is actually where we are going to perform our procedures in analyzing our samples. So, paano natin ma-ensure na may magandang quality ang pag-perform natin ng test procedure? So, dito na papasok si quality control. So, quality control are referring to a lot of activities to ensure that we are going to provide our patients with the best quality, with the best product by giving them accurate results. So this chart is going to provide us the different activities involved in the testing process, okay, which one are included in pre-analytic, analytic, and post-analytic. And we are also going to be aware in which in what particular time, okay, we are going to be relevant as medical technologists in the testing process, okay, and also the involvement of technology. Okay, so the clinical need, okay, meaning ang request ng patient, order, okay, coming from the doctor, collection, transport, receiving, sorting, preparation, okay, and aliquoting of our samples are included in the pre-analytic phase, okay? So after they are going to be prepared, they will be in the analytic phase by loading the sample reagents, preparation of your sample reagents, mixing them, or everything that is actually included in the analysis. And lastly, post-analysis, so that would be storage of samples, recording and reporting our results, and of course, integrate with other clinical information. Now, saan tayo papasok? Okay? Ano ang role ni physician? Most often, the physician is only included in the pre-analytic as well as the post-analytic. Okay? Tayo, medical technologist, is the one who is involved in the analytic phase, rather here, in the analytic phase of testing. Okay? So, malaki masyado ang role natin. And with that, okay, we have to ensure that our staff, the medical technologists, are competent enough to perform this type of testing. So, that's why ang requirements natin is mainly you have the license. Okay? Kung nakaka-lisensya, okay, that means you are competent enough, okay, to perform all the procedures of the laboratory. Now, hindi na natin makaligtaan na meron na talagang involvement ng technology. Okay? So, sometimes, we cannot actually easily work, okay, without technology. But always remember that technology can also make mistakes. So it is the role of humans to ensure that the machines that we are going to use in the laboratory is working accurately. Okay? So most of the analyzers, okay, are actually involved in the analytic phase. Okay, so that's why, okay, we have to ensure that our machines are working properly, and that is actually included in the quality control activity. Quality assurance, as defined by the Clinical Laboratory Standards Institute, they are made up of planned and systematic activities to provide adequate confidence so that the requirements for quality will be met. And according to Bishop, quality assurance is the measurement of the broader dimension of quality from the perspective of the end user or client. Most often, as the patient in the laboratory, what we can easily observe are actually the services that is part from the pre-analytical phase and post-analytical phase. Pero hindi na natin alam kung anong nangyayari during the analytical phase. So, ito ang tututukan ng quality assurance, particularly quality control. And that is actually beyond what the end user or the client can observe. And that is mainly to ensure that we are going to provide them with the highest quality of our services. So, what are the benefits of laboratory quality assurance? Quality assurance provides evidence of good performance. Our means of measuring the quality of our services is through statistical approach, and these values are going to give us if we have provided the best services to our clients. It also enables to prevent laboratory mistakes, and that is because we are able to identify our errors. And if errors are identified, we are able to improve on them, and there will be significant improvements in testing performance, which can be achieved. Why is it important to perform quality assurance in testing? Number one, our clients, mainly our patients, expect high quality of services that is actually worth the price that they are paying. It also defines parameters and quality goals of the laboratory. It is our means of evaluating and improving our system, particularly because we are able to identify such errors. It assures reliability and comparability of results. And because we are able to maintain accuracy, and that makes our results very reliable in order to achieve the patient's proper diagnosis. It is cost effective, most likely because if you are not going to perform quality assurance in the laboratory, you are going to perform repeat testing most often, most likely because you were not able to um, identify your errors. And if errors are identified, it is going to compromise the quality because most likely the end of that is that you are going to give out improper, inaccurate, and imprecise results. Even the simplest of testing is not foolproof. Even if you are just mixing samples, even if you are just separating the serum and the red cells, okay, coming from the blood sample of the patient, there are actually errors that might occur. And that is actually what is being prevented if we are going to assure the quality of our testing. Let us take a look at the quality assurance model. So we can actually compare it to a tripod in which the top portion is your quality assurance. However, it cannot be achieved if one of its leg is missing. So the three legs comprises proficiency testing, you have the staff as well as quality control. So based from the model, these are the pillars of quality assurance. You have staffing and personnel, quality control, and proficiency testing, also known as external quality assurance. So we will start with staffing personnel. One of the key components in providing quality service to the laboratory is the staff, or particularly it's the medical technologist. So a medical technologist must be able to execute responsibilities of director, supervisor, and testing personnel. Most likely because we are going to have different positions in the laboratory. One is the section head, okay, you can be the chief medtech, okay, you can be the laboratory manager, or the other junior medtechs. So soon enough, okay, you are going to be promoted and will assume higher responsibilities. That's why one of the key qualifications is that you are able to supervise personnel, okay, as well as execute responsibilities of higher positions. Next, okay, you must have appropriate educational credentials. And one of the credential that we are actually going to look is the license. Okay, so it is necessary that you are going to pass the board exam in order to become a fully licensed medical technologist that could be relied upon in performing test procedures. Okay, you must have appropriate experience. Okay, so Experience, okay, will always start during internship. So all the things that you are going to learn in the internship will be applied if you are going to fully execute your profession. But, okay, experience is different when you are going to be a student as well as if you are already a professional. Because a student, you are actually still guided. But once you are already a professional, okay, you can actually be left alone. So you really have to rely on your skills and capabilities. Okay, you are able to receive training. So once you are going to work in the laboratory, you will be sent to a lot of trainings nationally or sometimes internationally. And competency assessment. So this is actually a part of the external quality assurance in which it is going to measure, okay, the medical technology's capability and competency as well as the quality of the laboratory wherein you are working. We are done with the staffing and the personnel. Now let us proceed to quality control. So what exactly is quality control? What are the measures and activities involved in it? According to Bishop, quality control in the clinical laboratory involves the systemic monitoring of analytic processes to detect analytic errors during analysis. So that means quality control is referring to activities that is involved mainly to measure the errors that is involving the analytical phase of the laboratory process. And its ultimate goal is to prevent the reporting of incorrect patient test results, mainly to ensure accuracy. According to Henry, quality control is a testing designed to assess the health of an analytical method. What we are trying to assess here is not actually the machine, not necessarily the reagent, or not necessarily the process of the laboratory, but mainly the analytical method that we used in processing the samples of the patient. If in case that there are actually many errors or there could be a lot of inaccuracies of the laboratory results based on the quality control results, then it is actually the time wherein we are going to change the analytical method and try to use new analytical methods which are much more reliable and accurate. Having quality control is essential. It enables us to detect errors, and once errors are detected, we are able to prevent them. It is able to measure our performance by having or identifying biases, imprecision, and total error. It enables us to monitor our performance as well as validate our performance. The results that we are going to gather from our quality control measures is going to validate or confirm whether the process, the procedure, the instrument, or the method that we are going to use in analyzing our patient samples is actually properly operating, so that we can actually be having the confidence that the results that we are releasing are actually very reliable. So once the system is already validated, the patient results can be utilized now by the physician in order to diagnose and treat our patients. So how do we perform basic quality control measures? So we are going to retrieve a control sample, and this control sample is going to be run in the machine or run with the use of the procedure that we use in the laboratory. It could be run separately or it could be run along with the patient samples randomly. So once running is done, we are going to get the result of our quality control sample, and it is expected that these results must be within the range of values provided by the manufacturer in the product insert. But there could be instances that the results will not be within range. So it is important that we are going to check if the results are right. If in case that the results are within the expected range, then therefore we are confident that the system is working and that we can confidently release the patient results, okay? Because we are assured that the machine is working properly, the method is working properly. But if in case the results are proving otherwise, then therefore the procedure is not working, or probably the machine or the instrument that we use in the laboratory is not working properly. So therefore, you have to assess your procedure, try to find out what caused the error, bakit hindi pumasok yung QC control values, and do not report the patient's results. You are going to report them only if you have resolved the problem in your instrument or in your procedure. So basically, quality control is checking if the analyzer, when you say analyzer, that refers to the instrument you use in the laboratory, is producing correct results. As I have mentioned before, quality control is actually measured by statistical approaches. So the methods or the concepts applied in measuring quality control include central tendency, the range, getting the standard deviation, as well as the coefficient variation. And then once we have the values, we are going to plot the data using the Levy-Jennings chart. And based on the Levy-Jennings chart, we are able to identify errors, if there are any trends and shifts in the results of our control samples, and apply the multi-rule systems or the Westgard rules. So do not be confused by the terms quality assurance and quality control, because quality assurance is actually measuring or assuring the quality of the procedures in the entire laboratory process, from pre-analytical, analytical, as well as post-analytical. But quality control is actually a part of quality assurance. Remember, it is a part of the pillars of quality assurance, along with staff and professional competency. But that QA, again, is measuring the entire process, pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical. Meanwhile, QC is actually focused on the analytical process of laboratory testing. And it is actually going to ensure that our lab tests are done right, and to ensure that the results produced by the laboratory from the instrument and the method that we use in analyzing samples are accurate. So we have another concept in quality assurance, and that is actually calibration. And they are actually being confused with quality control. So let's try to differentiate the two concepts. Calibration is actually setting the analyzer to give correct results by using calibrators. Okay, so calibrator is actually another reagent, okay, to be purchased by the laboratory, and it is utilized to calibrate your instrument, and that is actually setting your instrument to zero. Parang gi-reset niya ang inyong machines in the laboratory. Meanwhile, quality control is actually checking if your instrument is working properly. So that is mainly by analyzing if your instrument is producing the correct results, and to check if the instrument's calibration is right, and also other analytical processes. So mainly, if your calibration is resetting your machine, okay, to give correct results, then it is quality control that is actually checking if your calibration is done right, or if your instrument is calibrated properly. Because if in case that there is problem in calibration, then therefore quality control results will usually be fluctuating, and that is actually indicating error, so indicating that there is problem in your calibrating procedure. So in order to perform calibration and quality control, we are going to make use of reagents. So for calibration, we are going to make use of a solution that contains a known amount of analyze that is used to calibrate or to set an assay method. Meanwhile, quality control solutions are used to monitor the performance of an assay method once it has been calibrated. So what type of performance? Mainly, if your procedure is giving precise and accurate results. So when are we going to perform calibration and running of our quality control samples? So calibration can be done manually by the laboratory analyst prior to running of our quality control samples. Or sometimes we are going to set laboratory instruments to perform automatic calibration. But most often, we are going to perform it manually so that yung calibrator natin is hindi ma-waste, because calibrators are actually very expensive. Okay, so dili siya dapat sayang-sayangan. So when do we need to do calibration of our procedure or our instruments. Okay, so that is based on the quality control results. So your quality control samples can be run alongside patient samples, in which the results are calculated from the calibration data. So therefore, the results of your quality control samples are going to be dependent on the manner of calibrating your machine. So therefore, if naaga ni problem sa calibration, this will always give out erroneous quality control results. So therefore, merong error na nangyari. So the evidence for using calibration should come from QC sample results. So mainly, okay, quality control is actually going to evaluate, okay, the type of evaluation, the type of calibration that was done on your machine. So, if in case na may problem tayo sa calibration kasi pangit ang quality control results natin, then therefore, do not release the patient results. Kasi that indicates error. Something is wrong with the machine. But if in case that your quality control results are okay, so that means calibration is done right, then you are confident that you are giving accurate results. So what are our bases for selecting the right control materials? So number one, it must closely mimic the characteristic of the patient sample being tested. When you say closely mimic, it must be of the same matrix of the patient sample. Matrix refers to the substance or base from which the control material is prepared. So therefore, if you are assigned in clinical chemistry, the mean sample that we are going to analyze is actually your serum. So therefore, your control material must also be of the same matrix as the patient's serum. So for example, if nandun tayo sa clinical microscopy, then most likely, okay, the machine is going to analyze urine. Then therefore, the control material must be the same as your urine. If sa hematology naman tayo, your control material must be the same as whole blood. Hindi naman exactly the same, but actually, having the same matrix, okay, or actually almost the same type of components. So if in case that your QC material is not as exactly the same as the patient sample, then that is going to be a problem. So it is not going to be able to validate, okay, our procedure, mainly because your control material is not in the same matrix as your patient sample. QC materials must be stable for prolonged periods, at least a year, without interfering preservatives or special storage needs. So if you are going to get or purchase one vial of your control material, okay, it will be aliquoted into small amounts, and it is actually going to be consumable, okay, for at least 6 months. So it is important that once it is stored, it will be stable for long periods of time. So ideally, the form of QC material that is recommended in laboratories is the lyophilized form. When you say lyophilized, it is dehydrated to powder, but once it is going to be added with diluent, it is actually quite the same as the matrix of our sample. So the problem of control materials, particularly if they are going to deteriorate in upon storage, okay, so that would actually give us erroneous results. So it could not properly validate, okay, the quality of the procedure that we use for analysis. Ideally, control materials must be inexpensive, okay? So somehow, your control materials are much more expensive compared to the reagents that you are going to use in your procedure, okay? But despite the expense, okay, it is going to give us or measure the quality of our procedure. So again, okay, we are still benefiting from it despite its cost, okay? So, depende na lang kung unsa ang control nga moangay sa inyuhang laboratory. But somehow, most controls are usually pricey. So, kaning gina-term din hinga inexpensive. So, probably sa level sa mga control reagents, okay, depende na lang siguro sa brand, okay, kung saan ang mas lesser ang price or mas higher. Okay? So, Your control materials are available in aliquots that is convenient for daily use, and you have to include at least two levels of controls. Okay, so it could be normal, one normal control, and the other one is abnormal control. So it could be abnormally high or abnormally low. But somehow, sometimes yung abnormal control contains both high and low concentrations of particular analytes. So for example, in chemistry, okay, pag sabihin nating abnormal control, sometimes glucose is high, uric acid is low. Okay, mataas si SGPT sa control material, and mababa naman si creatinine. Sometimes it's a combination. But there could be instances nga, abnormally high tanan ang analytes, or it could be abnormally low analytes, okay, low levels of analytes. But in some other areas of the laboratory like immunohematology as well as hematology, they usually perform or have three levels of controls. So you have normal control, you have abnormally low, and you also have abnormally high controls. Okay, so usually, control materials as recommended by CLSI must be in lyophilized form. So remember, they are in powdered form. So therefore, we are going to reconstitute it by adding a diluent. Now, we have to ensure that we are going to measure the specific amount of diluent to be added on our lyophilized control materials, because if there is um, inaccurate, okay, amount of diluent that is being measured to be added in your QC material, it is going to alter now the concentrations of the analytes that are present. So, isa rin sa problem for QC materials is the right amount of diluent to be added. So, that's why you are going to be trained in your laboratories to perform manual pipetting. So, we are not going to rely mostly on automated pipetting because sometimes your automated pipettes are no longer calibrated. So even if it is going to measure 500 UL, if it is not regularly calibrated, probably there could be problems in its measurement. So instead of having 500 UL, it could be having 505 or 510 if it is not calibrated regularly. Okay, so very important ang calibration, not just in our procedures, but also in the instruments that we are going to use in the laboratory. So one of the problems also is the reconstitution. So dapat tamang amount of diluent, or ensured dapat na tamang amount ng diluent ang ma-add. And that is mainly to avoid altering the concentrations of the analytes present in your control materials. So control materials must be in convenient packaging so that we can easily dispense and store them. Okay. So usually in the clinical chemistry area, okay, we have lyophilized forms of QC materials, and once it is going to be reconstituted with the diluent, it is going to be prepared in separate tubes with a particular amount, so that you are just going to simply get the usual amount of control material to be run in the machine, okay, because somehow, okay, the storage of our control materials is usually at freezing temperature, okay, but once frozen, it is going to be utilized until, or it is going to have a shelf life of over a year. So, dugay siya madaot. But prior to using your control materials, again, with the same concept of other reagents in immunology, kay hematology, it must be thawed at room temperature prior to testing. Okay? So, what we usually do is kung timplahan namo ni og diluent, okay? So, kung tahay, dirit kutob ang diluent. So, nahimo na siyang almost the same as the matrix of the sample that we are going to use. And we separate it into different tubes. Okay, so tubes, and then we are going to place, okay, specific amount of the control material, and then it is going to be stored at freezing temperatures. Okay, so most likely 0 degrees Celsius or pwede rin 2 degree Celsius. Okay? So, thaw it to 37 degrees no, at room temperature rather, before it is going to be utilized. So, dapat ma-separate siya para sa imuhang daily control usage. Okay? Dili ka siging thaw ani unya i-freeze na pod kung dili nimo i-separate into tubes. So, what would happen? Once your reagents are thawed, okay, it could no longer be refrozen. Kay madaot na siya. Okay, so for easy dispensing, okay, so aside from chemistry na ingon ani ang iyahang form, okay, so this one right here is actually for urine, okay, so it is going to be dispensed by drops, okay, so for hematology naman, siya, it is actually in tubes, okay, because the manner of processing blood samples in hematology is actually hindi siya kailangan i-separate from the tube because we are going to utilize whole blood. So, blood from EDTA tube, okay, will then be resuspended, okay, and then fed into the machine. So, how we are going to process the sample, that is also how we are going to process our control materials. So, in hematology, the blood is going to remain in tubes. So, therefore, ang atong control, ingon ani pod og form. So now let us proceed to the different types of control materials. So we have three types. We have acid, we have an acid, and we have homemade or in-house control materials. So how do we differentiate the three? Okay, so acid control materials have predetermined target value, meaning na ana siya specific values and range assigned to a particular analyte, and that is actually set by the manufacturer as stated in the product inserts. Okay, so what we are going to do is that we just have to use, and then it is going to verify now your results. Okay, so for example, if ang analyte nato is glucose, okay, and according to the product insert of your QC material, ang glucose range daw is dapat 4.9 to 5.1, okay, millimoles per liter or depende sa ilahang unit. Now, when you acid the control material and then ang result niya kay within this range, then therefore, you are confident nga tanang glucose results nga gikan ato nga procedure or gikan ato nga machine kay tama. Okay? So for example, if the result is let's say 5, okay? So in between siya sa range, okay? 4.9 to 5.1 man siya. But if in case that your result if the result of your QC assay is actually 4.3, so it is actually lower than the required range. So therefore, you can detect nga ay naadyo'y problem ang machine. So you have to uh, resolve, okay, the error first and then run another control. If in the second time, okay, what we usually do is kung ani gani ang resulta, okay, ay baba siya, so wala siya sa range. So that's the time that you are going to calibrate your machine, okay? You set it to 0. After calibrating, you are going to run, okay, the same control material and try to identify if within range na ba siya. Now, in your second running, within range na siya, then therefore, calibration ra gyud ang kailangan sa machine. But if in case that in the second running or yes, in the second running of your QC material after you have calibrated your machine, mababa pa rin. So for instance, if it is 4.4, so it is still below the accepted range. That therefore, this is a confirmation that there is really something wrong with your machine. Kasi even if you have already calibrated it, hindi pa rin okay ang result. So it could possibly be in the reagent, okay, or possible na naapod siya problem ang imong control material. Kay maski gi-calibrate na nimo nganong dili gihapon pasok sa range, okay? Or it could be possible that you also have problems in your calibrating reagent. Okay, kay nganong dili gihapon within range ang results. Okay? But the downside of your acid control material is that it is more expensive. Expensive siya, pero wala na kay hago because all you have to do is run your control material, get the result, and try to check if it is within range. Okay, so naay convenience sa part sa medical technologies. Now, if you are going to say an acid control materials, okay, target values are not predetermined and you have to establish full assay. So that means you have to run, okay, your an acid control material 5 times and you are going to do some computations in order to get a particular range. So unlike your acid control material, provided na sa manufacturer ang range. Okay, for determining if pasok ba ang result, okay, ng QC mo with a particular value, okay? But in an acid kasi hindi. Okay, so you are the one who will be establishing, okay, the range of that particular analyte. Okay? So, dako kayo siya nga trabaho sa medtech, but it is less expensive. So, somehow, it will still depend on the administration of your medical facility where you are going to work, if they are going to use acid or unacid. But most often, acid QC materials are utilized. Okay, so we also have your homemade or in-house QC material. So this is not actually purchased, but rather these are actually collected sira. So ginapool nato ang mga serum sa mga pasyente in the laboratory, and then you are going to conduct a full assay. So kung kani, for example, 5 runs of your QC material to get or to establish a full assay, kani siya siguro most likely mas daghan. Okay? Kasi pooled sira. Okay? So, gikan lang sa mga sample sa atong patient. Therefore, validation is needed. Okay? In which, kailangan pa nimo i-validate. So, if your control material needs to be validated, so most likely it is not reliable and it is not preferable. Okay? And aside from that, the pooled sera collected in the laboratory is actually infectious. So, dili ni siya advisable. So, what is really preferred is either acid or unacid, but for convenience to the part of the medical technologist, okay, acid is much more preferred. So according to the Clinical Laboratory Standards Institute, okay, or what we call as your CLSI, if acid materials are used, the values that is stated on the assay sheets, meaning in the product insert provided by the manufacturer, should only be used as guides. Okay? So, ato lang siyang reference. But somehow, in measuring the actual procedure, we are going to get the actual values and use it for computing the standard deviation. And it must be established by serial testing in the laboratory. So, when you say serial testing, so mag-conduct ta og control running for our machines daily. And you are going to collect the actual values in a particular period. So, for example, for 1 week, okay, kunin mo yung actual values and then you compute for the standard deviation. Okay, and then we are going to do plotting it in a graphical manner. So, that is the Levy-Jennings chart. So, every lab should establish their own range. So, again, ang manufacturer guide lang siya, okay? But we are going to get the standard deviation based on the actual values as well as on the range that is actually provided by the product inserts, okay? Given to us by the manufacturer of our QC materials. And from then, we are going to establish our own range. So, with regards to the computation part of the quality control set up in the laboratory, okay, that would be in the next lecture. So this is actually just an introduction, okay, to your quality control concept. So the CLSI is going to recommend that at least 20 measurements should be made on separate days when the measurement system is known to be stable. Okay, so according to CLSI, at least 20 measurements. Okay, so somehow, okay, in the laboratory where I used to work, okay, we used 20 measurement days. So in 20 consecutive days, we are going to get, okay, the results of our QC assays, and then we are going to use that to get the standard deviation, okay, and get our range. So that's the time that we are able to measure if the system or the procedure that we are using in analyzing our patient samples is stable. Pag sinabing stable, therefore, it is reliable. And we are confident to release results coming from those machines mainly because our quality control results are said to be stable. So the first one would be about accuracy. So accuracy refers to the closeness of a test value to the actual or target or true value. So how are we going to get the target value? And that is actually the mean, okay, of all the values. So you just have to simply get the average of all the values in a 20-day running of your QC material, and then you are going to get the mean. Okay, so therefore, if your daily values are actually around the mean or very near the mean. So if you are going to compare that with the dartboard, okay, so if the bullseye, okay, is actually our mean and our control values are actually very near the mean or right in the mean, so therefore that means that they are accurate. Accuracy of a procedure can be measured in three ways, and one of them is recovery study. So in recovery study, you are going to get a small aliquot of a concentrated analyte and add it into a patient's sample. Then you are going to measure the method that you are going to validate or evaluate. So recovery study measures how much of the analyte can be detected in the presence of all other compounds in a particular matrix. So for example, you get the patient's serum, okay? And then nag-add ka og concentrated nga glucose. Okay? And then you are going to run the sample in the machine. So kung ma-detect gani nga taas kaayo ang glucose, then therefore, okay, the method is able to detect that particular analyte maski naapay laing other substances present. Because in the serum, for example, aside from glucose, you have creatinine, you have uric acid, okay? Pero when you tested the sample for glucose, okay, and you used it for recovery study, meaning nag-add ka og concentrated glucose, and na-detect niya na mataas ang glucose, then therefore, it is actually a good or an accurate method. Okay. The second method is interference study. Okay. So this is able to determine if the specific compounds can affect or the specific compounds, okay, found in the sample, okay, can affect the measuring or the accuracy of the lab test, okay. So remember that these interfering substances can actually alter the results by scattering light, absorbing light, and sometimes it is going to react with your reagents. So what they usually do is that they are going to add interfering substances in your sample. So what are these interfering substances? So that is in the form of hemoglobin in cases of hemolysis. You have um, lipids in lipemic samples. Okay, if patients have bilirubinemia, so meaning bilirubin is the interfering substance, or it could be anticoagulant. So that's why in chemistry we tend to use serum, okay? Because anticoagulants, if we are going to use plasma, anticoagulants present may be able to interfere with our testing, okay? And sometimes samples that are preserved, okay, the preservatives utilized in the sample or placed in the sample could also alter our results, okay? So for example, mag-run ta og sample and measure it or try to evaluate if the method is accurate enough that despite the presence of interfering samples, ma-analyze gihapon niya ang katong analyte of interest. So for example, you are looking for testing for total protein. Okay, so in order to determine the accuracy of the method, okay, you add interfering substances. So for example, you added hemoglobin. Okay. So remember that your hemoglobin is actually containing proteins. Okay. So if when you do the running of the sample, okay, so ang initial total protein niya is normal. Okay. When you added hemoglobin, okay, kay syempre na mangyapon ni siya protein component ning taas. Okay. So therefore, that method is not good. Okay, if there are presence of interfering substances. But if in case that when you add the interfering substance and then the result, okay, is still normal, then therefore maganda ang method mo, because despite the presence of those substances that could hinder, okay, giving out a right result and reliable result, okay, um it is still able to give you good quality of results. So measurement of accuracy. Okay. The third one is your comparison of methods of study. Okay. Method comparison examines the patient sample by the method being evaluated with a reference method, okay, or your gold standard. Okay. When you say gold standard, that is a method with acceptable accuracy in comparison. And that is mainly to estimate the systemic error in actual patient sample. Okay. So for example, malaria. Okay. although hindi siya sa chemistry but in parasitology. Okay, so example, malaria. Okay, if you could recall, the gold standard of malaria testing is actually your microscopy, right? So even if you have RDTs, meaning rapid diagnostic testing for malaria, but still microscopy ang gold standard. Okay? So how are you going to measure the accuracy of your method with the use of comparison of method of study? So if you're trying to evaluate the method or the new method for malaria, okay, so you are going to compare the results with the use of microscopy. So for example, ang test kay maka-identify og Plasmodium. Okay? It could either be Falciparum, Vivax, kay Malariae, or Ovale, or Knowlesi, nga dili na kamo gamit og microscope. So, when you do that, okay, you test the sample, okay, with that method na dili mo gamit og microscope, and then you try to compare the results if you are going to use the gold standard. And that is microscopy. So for example, sa inyuhang bagong method kay falsi lang ang na-identify. Okay? Wala si Vivax. Okay? But when you do the gold standard of the testing procedure that is, or of the test that is microscopy, okay? Sa microscope, na-identify nga na ay Vivax. Okay? So therefore, okay, hindi accurate ang new method. Okay, so those are the three measures of our three methods, okay, in measuring accuracy. So one, let us try to recall, okay, you have recovery study. So when you say recovery study, that is by giving, okay, a particular concentrated analyte, okay, in the patient sample and then measure it. Okay, and then we have interference study. So you are going to add, okay, interfering substances and measure the sensitivity of your reference method. Nga, despite the presence of these interfering substances, okay, you are still able to get the accurate result. Okay, and lastly, you have comparison of the methods of study. Okay, methods of study. Okay, so therefore, in this method for measuring accuracy, you are going to compare your new method, okay, or your procedure, okay, with the gold standard of that particular test. So another term is precision. Precision refers to the consistency of a series of test results and the closeness of agreement between independent test results obtained under prescribed condition. So this is actually best explained, okay, if you are going to run a specific sample, okay, how in a number of times. So for example, nag-run ka og sample sa patient 4 times, okay? And then you are going to gather the results, okay? So if the results are actually almost the same. So for example, first running, ang results sa imong glucose kay 4.8, okay? Second running, nasa 4.9. Third running, you have 4.85, okay? And for fourth running, you have 4.75, okay? So if you could notice, gagmay ra kaayo og agwat, okay? So therefore, okay, this is actually referring to precision. Okay, so your results are precise, okay? Consistent siya, okay? In which very close lang ang difference sa isa ka result to another result of the same sample. So it is the degree of replication of data, okay? And it actually ensures the ability of an analytical method to give repeated results on the same sample that actually agree with one another, okay? Because very small lang or very low, okay, ang difference ng values. Okay, so let us try to understand, okay, by comparing accuracy and precision. So how are you going to judge the following values in terms of accuracy and precision? So let us take a look at this first example. So you have a dartboard here. Okay, so this is the bullseye. So meaning diri ang mean. Okay, so for your repeated test results. Okay, so all of the results are here. So, meaning, layo ra siya sa mean, okay? Pero, okay, all of your test results have very small difference from one value to another, okay? So, what does this mean? Meaning, it is precise, however, inaccurate, okay? Grabe ang precision because the repeated test, okay, actually is giving you values that are very close to each other. However, inaccurate. Bakit inaccurate? Kasi malayo siya sa mean. Okay? Precise, maganda ang precision. However, malayo siya sa true value. Okay? Next, how about this one? Okay. This is precise and accurate. Okay, so remember, andito ang mean natin. That is the bullseye. Okay, so very near ang value sa desired value or sa true value, and at the same time, the repeated test shows consistency of the values. Okay, gagmay ra kayo og agwat or gagmay ra kayo og difference, and they are actually very near the desired value. So this is precise and accurate. So this is actually what we are trying to achieve in the laboratory, okay, in which the results, okay, of our QC materials, okay, are actually very near the mean, okay, or the desired value, and at the same time, no matter how many times you are going to repeat it, it is consistent, okay, almost the same ang values na ginahatag sa imong machine. So this is not only applicable to the QC material, okay, but also in our patient samples. So if ang imuhang values, okay, if you are going to repeatedly test the sample of the patient, okay, pero same lang ang values nga iyang ginahatag, okay, so that is actually a very good indicator that your machine is properly working, okay. So for example, if a patient has a high result, okay, taas kaayo, so for example, um, glucose is 18, okay, millimoles per liter. Okay, so this is very high. Okay, kasi I think the upper limit is only 5.9 millimoles per liter. So, murag 3 times, okay, the upper limit of the normal value. So, if you are going to do, if you are going to be the medical technologist, okay, what would you do? Okay, abnormally high. Okay, so with just one running, are you simply going to report the result of the patient? Okay. So dili gyud kay lisod pod if mo report ka ani niya human lisod po dawaton sa patient nga diabetic di ay siya, okay? But somehow, okay, ikaw at the back of your mind is also going to assess if base na ay mali sa imong procedure. So what we usually do is that we are going to do retesting. So rerunning of the sample in the said machine. Okay. So now, in the second running, so first running ni sa patient sample. On the second running, gihatagan ko niyag 8.2 nga result. Okay. So meaning, very near man siya. Okay. So that is actually good precision. Okay. Yang imong control kay naa diri ingon ani na sa mean. Okay. And so therefore, that is going to give you a or you will be confident, okay, to release the sample. Okay, so, okay. Taas gyud ni ang iyahang sugar. Kay gwapo og result ang akong control values and upon running of the same sample twice, okay, very minimal ang difference. So that means ako ning i-release ang sample, ay ang result. So mo jud ni ang tamang result sa patient. Okay, how about this picture right here? Okay, what can you or how are you going to judge the values? Okay, so if you could notice, this is the mean. Layo ra siya sa mean. Tapos, they are not actually hitting the same spot. So, meaning, lagyo o gap ang isa ka arrow to another arrow. So, therefore, this is evident na imprecise and inaccurate ang imuhang results. Okay? So, therefore, ito ang ina-avoid natin sa laboratory. So, that's why it is important that you do QC running or running of your quality control materials to avoid imprecision and inaccuracy. So reliability refers to the capacity of a method to maintain both accuracy and precision. So when are you going to say that this method is reliable? Okay, if it is already proven that it is consistently accurate and precise, okay, in already a very long period of time. So this is actually our basis for making a particular method as a gold standard. Okay, because no matter ilang years na ang lumipas since the usage of that particular method, but it is consistently giving you accurate and precise results. Okay, so therefore, it is said to be reliable. So a method is said to be repeatable and practicable if you are going to run it and it is able to produce the same results, okay, on one sample again and again when performed by the same individual using the same lot numbers on the same instrument. Okay, so let me enlighten you a bit about lot numbers. Lot numbers, okay, as given to you here in this illustration. Okay, so may word na lot. Okay, and there is a particular number here. Okay, so this is actually going to be our basis for running calibrations for our machine. If yung bagong reagent has a new lot number, okay, or the lot number is different from the lot number of the previous reagent that you use, that is actually our indicator of calibrating the instrument. Okay, kasi bago ang lot number. So, kailangan iset natin ulit. Okay, so that method is said to be repeatable and practicable if you have run, okay, the same result, okay, paulit-ulit, okay, and using the same lot numbers on the reagent, okay, on the same instrument. Okay, so that is a good quality of your QC material or your reagent. So reproducibility, okay, is the capacity of the method to produce the same results on one sample again and again when performed by different individuals on different days using different sets of reagents. So do not confuse this term with repeatability, although they are quite similar, okay, but they are actually different. Because in repeatability, the method is able to give you the same sample, the same results on the same sample again and again using at the same time, okay, done by the same individual with the use of the same lot number of reagent, okay. Meanwhile, reproducibility is the capacity of the method, okay, to give you the same results, okay, of the same sample, okay, performed by different medical technologies on different days and on different reagent, okay. So in order to visualize this one. Okay, so let us try to have the QC running of our machines. Okay, so quality control running is done daily, thrice a day. Okay, so meaning saan doon ang repeatability and saan doon ang reproducibility. Ang repeatability doon is yung running mo ng control thrice a day. Okay, it is giving you the same result. If it is going to give you the same result of the same sample, okay, done by the same individual at the same day, okay, using the same reagent. Okay, saan si reproducibility? Yung pag-run mo ng control daily. Okay, kasi they are done, okay, the method is going to give you same results, okay, on the same sample, okay, done by different individuals kasi iba-iba ang medtech na ma-assign sa isang particular area daily, okay, done by different individuals, okay, done on different days, and done on different sets of reagents. Okay, so therefore, it only means that regardless kung sino ang mag-run ng sample, regardless kung kailan mo na-run ang sample, and regardless kung anong reagent na lot number or anong set of reagents ang ginamit mo on the same sample, it is still able to give you the same result. Okay, so that is actually a good evaluation of your method. So now let us proceed to sensitivity and specificity. Sensitivity refers to the ability of an analytical method to measure the smallest concentration of the analyte of interest. Specificity, on the other hand, is the ability of an analytical method to measure only the analyte of interest. Okay, so for example, okay, I am going to measure, okay, the creatinine levels of the patient. Okay. Okay. So, for instance, if the normal value is 20, okay, to 95, okay, millimoles per liter. Okay? So, mo ni ang normal range. Okay? But if the test, okay, is able to give you results as low as 10 millimoles per liter, okay, which is way beyond, okay, the normal range. Okay? So, meaning, kaya niya ma-detect, okay, ang presence of that particular analyte even if gamay lang ang iyahang content on that particular sample. So, therefore, the test is highly sensitive. Okay? Kaya maski gamay lang ang amount of analyte, kaya niya ma-detect. Okay? Specificity naman, okay, in this case, okay, knowing that the serum sample of the patient may contain other compounds, not just creatinine, okay? It may contain glucose, it may contain uric acid, it may contain triglycerides, it may contain SGPT, okay? Pero, kaya niya ma-measure yung analyte of interest only. Okay? So, despite the presence of other compounds in that serum sample, but it can specifically detect, okay, the presence of that particular analyte. So, that is specificity. So, therefore, ideally, an ideal method or a reliable method is both sensitive as well as specific. Okay, because there are actually some tests that are less sensitive, okay, but highly specific. Or sometimes it could be highly sensitive, okay, but less specific. Okay, so ito ang pinaka-important. So a method is very effective if there is high sensitivity, okay, and also high specificity. So we also have diagnostic sensitivity and diagnostic specificity. So diagnostic sensitivity is the ability of the test to detect the portion of individuals with that disease who test positively for the test. So simply to say, diagnostic sensitivity refers to the ability of a test to detect a given disease or condition. Meanwhile, diagnostic specificity refers to the ability of the test to detect the proportion of individual without the disease who test negatively for the disease. So, sa madaling salita, it is the ability of a test to correctly identify the absence of a given disease or condition. So, si sensitivity detects a given disease or condition. Diagnostic specificity identifies the absence of a given disease or condition. So we are currently at the last pillar of your quality assurance, and that is proficiency testing, or also known as external quality assurance. Proficiency testing occurs when the central organization sends out challenge specimens for testing. Okay, so when you say central organization, they are actually referring to reference labs. Okay, so remember that different areas of the laboratory tend to have particular reference labs. Okay, and they are going to send blind specimens in laboratory. So how does it work? Okay, so for example, we have the um, reference laboratory for immunology and serology, and that is your San Lazaro Hospital. So San Lazaro Hospital is going to send blind samples on the laboratory, and you are going to test it for specific tests. Okay, so for example, this serum sample provided by San Lazaro Hospital, sent from San Lazaro Hospital, will be tested for HEPA, others for HIV. Okay, so Hepa B, Hepa C, HIV, as well as for syphilis. Okay, so we don't know if they are going to be positive or negative. So what we usually do in the laboratory is to just simply test them. So whatever are the results, we are going to send it to the reference lab. Okay, and then they are going to be evaluated and scored. So the laboratory or the reference laboratory will be checking your answers if they are correct. So for example, in parasitology, the reference laboratory would be your Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, or your RITM. So RITM is going to give out stool samples, okay, which contains different types of parasites. And once we receive that blind sample, we are going to analyze it, try to identify all the possible parasites that might be present, and enumerate them. And we are going to send that result to the RITM. And RITM will be checking it and evaluate our results, and we are scored. So sometimes in the laboratory, we tend to post, okay, the results of our external quality assessment. Okay, so we are proud if we get a very high score, okay, or of course, hindi i-post pag hindi maganda ang score. So what is the purpose of having EQAS? External quality assurance also gives us early warning system for problems, and it is also able to measure the laboratory quality in another perspective. Okay, so somehow it is also a check for the quality or the internal quality assurance of the laboratory. Okay, so this is a good means of avoiding biases, because us in the laboratory tend to uh, make use of the same method over and over again, or for a very long time, mainly because we feel convenient as well as comfortable with the method, and also it may be cost effective. But somehow we also need to do updating of our methods, and that could actually be proven by external quality assurance. So what we usually do is that we are going to enroll the laboratory for in participating external quality assurance, and then we are able to measure the quality of our services, okay, from another source, okay, or from another. So it is a valuable benchmarking tool for standardization and traceability, and it is also a good indicator of where to directly improve our efforts. And at the same time, it is able to monitor the changes in technology and testing practices. So this is also a good means of evaluating if our method utilized in the laboratory is still effective, or if there is a need for us to change the method and upgrade it, because the method is less specific, and there are actually other methods that are highly specific and highly sensitive, so that we can also cope up with the changes of the time when it comes to improving the method that we use in the laboratory, and also to be competent, okay, along with other laboratories in the country. So based from the results of our external quality assurance, we found out that the method that we are currently using is no longer effective. So we are going to try, okay, to make use of another method. But before we are going to apply that particular method in our routine testing, it has to be evaluated. So how are we going to perform method evaluation? So first thing that we have to do is to select a test method. And most often, that test method has to be validated. So how are we going to do the validation? That is by measuring the precision, the accuracy, as well as the reportable range. Now, if in case na hindi kayo agree or hindi kayo hiyang, okay, with your results, then therefore, it's either you are going to improve or develop improvements on that particular method, okay? Or you are going to select another method and do validation again. So now, after validating your method and you think that they are also acceptable, so now you are going to do implementation of your method by including it in your routine testing, okay? So in your routine testing, you are going to test it, okay, by running QC statistics. Okay, so that is by monitoring your performance. Now, if may problem tayo sa QC and statistic results, okay, so therefore you are going to adjust, okay, or maintain your procedure, okay, and balik tayo sa implementation and make it your a part of your routine testing. Now, if sa based sa quality control results ninyo, it is actually okay, then therefore, all the results that is being run by the said method will now be reported. I know it is quite difficult for you to understand the concepts of quality management, mainly because you were not able to be in the actual laboratory, or that you were unable to perform a particular laboratory test. Okay, but still, I hope that you were able to grasp the context of quality assurance, quality control, and method evaluation, okay, despite the fact that we were deprived of having any laboratory activity. So, therefore, dear students, thank you so much for taking your time in listening to this and continue to stay safe. God bless you guys.